What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me on D's Analysis. We're going to be checking out MSTR and Bitcoin today. So we closed at 349.12. Pretty solid day for MSTR, up 5.89% today. And it outperformed the Bitcoin by 4.17 when you compare MSTR divided by IBIT. So it's a pretty solid day overall. See if the momentum can continue. Looks like we did reject at the level that we've had drawn out for a while now. Not surprised that we saw some kind of rejection. Doesn't mean that we can't break through it. But of course, as you're making your way up, we already spoke about this, where you're going to, even if we continue up, you're going to see some kind of stall out at price at this point. Price stall out at this point before continuing up. You're not just going to break through it without seeing any kind of rejection. And that's pretty much what we're seeing now. Nothing too concerning in my opinion. It's just nice to actually see that. The 4-hour candle, nice solid engulfing candle, and then a little red candle. Momentum probably died out, like the volume died out towards the end of the day. Let's see where the volume was today. Pretty good volume day actually, 20 million, almost 19.7 million. So that was pretty solid when you compare it to these previous days, which was 9.6, 8.6, 9.5, 7.5, and so on. So you're talking about practically 20 million volume for the day. Pretty solid. On the weekly, we still have 16 hours left, so we'll see where we can close. If we can close above this structure or inside of this structure, it's going to start to increase our odds of potentially piercing through here for a retest and continuing higher. Of course, right now, the odds are that we don't close inside of here, but it's always possible if we get another solid day back to back for Friday tomorrow. But we could expect a little bit of rejection, maybe stall out before, continuing up and using that as support to continue the move. And then, of course, on the bearish scenario, we could push up again, reject, and then we just kind of sideways chop and hopefully hold this zone before continuing up higher. Of course, we still have to think about what could happen if we do break under here. If we do break under here, it's pretty much the same thing. It goes both ways. It's expect sideways chop, then potential breakout to the upside. And then it's the same thing, like I said, potential sideways chop. And then if we fall underneath, expect a retest of this zone and continuation down. So that's pretty much how you, at least how I like to identify the moves. I like to box price in and then let the market show its hand in which direction it's more likely to go in. Remember, these are just increased odds when you break these zones. When you break here and retest, hold it, increases your odds of continuing higher, and vice versa to the downside. On the weekly, we're actually looking pretty solid right now. We're back above the 50. This was acting as a major level of resistance. So if we can use this as support, that's going to be nice to see. Now that we're back above it, we'll see. Like I said, we have 16 hours left. So if we can hold it, potentially retest off of that, that'll give us a little bit of support to potentially break this and eventually come to fight with the 20-week SMA, which is going to be another strong level of resistance. But it's not going to be as strong as the 50. So it could be a little bit easier to break. On the daily, looking pretty solid. We're well above our 20 now, and we got rejected off of our 200-day, which we spoke about in the last video, saying that this is going to be a strong level to look out for. And we found rejection and confluence with this major support and resistance level. So those two combined were enough to push price down. On the 8 EMA, it shows our short-term rallies. Looks pretty solid. We closed above, then back underneath, and now we opened back above and continued the move. We'll see if the trend can continue. On the weekly, it looks like we only came up for a retest. So we'll see how it plays out. Like I said, it has the short-term rallies. So this could be a reversal of this move, or it could also be a continuation, because we haven't touched it since August 11th, so it has been a while. And we typically come back for some kind of retest of the 8-week EMA, which we were talking about. It tends to come back at some point, because when you take a look at this example here, for instance, we broke out. Like I always say, we come back to test the 8 EMA, right? So we came back for our retest, and then this was pretty much using it. We're using the 8 EMA as a floor for a continuation higher. You can see that move. I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but you have to be aware of it, that we broke the 8 EMA, we tested it once, and then we had a pretty extended move off of here where we're well below the 8-week EMA. We come back for a retest. Are we going to use this as a floor or a ceiling for a continuation down, or will we be able to have enough momentum to break to the upside? Of course, it's going to be depending on Bitcoin and if MSTR wants to follow suit as it did prior. On the RSI, we're starting to curl up a little bit. It looks like we could potentially be seeing a double bottom, hopefully. We have seen a little bit of support at this region before. We've fallen slightly underneath this previous level of resistance, but you know, it's never a direct line, so it could just be a zone, and we're still in play with that zone with a double bottom. And here we had a steady climb of higher highs and higher lows, and then we absolutely just skyrocketed. And now we're at this next key level of resistance here at the midline. We'll see if we use it as support, turn this ceiling into a floor, and continue this move to eventually overbought territory, ideally, and eventually, you know, a green shaded area for a high aggressive move to the upside. Weekly MACD is still looking bearish, but you have seen a slight decrease in the bearish momentum. We'll see if the trend continues. Still early on. Blue line starting to get a little bit less steep, but nothing too major just yet. On the daily, I would imagine it's starting to look nice. Yes, it looks good. A nice spike. We have the blue curling well above the orange, and we're starting to see a little bit of momentum. Hopefully we can see a continuation of the green pushing up like that to the upside for a nice momentum play for MSTR, eventually breaking out of this, using this as support, and seeing what happens when we touch this key trend line where we've already had rejection 2 times, one there and a second one here. So as we come into contact with it on the 3rd attempt, we'll see what happens. Expect some kind of rejection, of course. Not saying that it's going to be impossible to break, but if we were to actually touch it, expect some kind of chop, and then we make a decision, just like we always do. Chop, maybe it's double, triple top, and then we come back down, or it turns into a bull flag, breakout, retest, and start a move higher. So those are the levels I'd be looking for MSTR. And when we take a look at Bitcoin, we're looking pretty solid. Got another daily close above the key structure. We found rejection off of this mid level that we were talking about. It's like a minor zone, but we were just saying to keep a heads up with it, because we have seen it be, you know, somewhat of a factor prior. So we kind of expected some kind of rejection along the way. Looks like we got that, but before that, we got a nice close above the structure, a retest, and we held. So now our odds of touching this next structure start to increase. But of course, prior to that, we do need to break this minor level, hold it, and continue the move. But right now, the odds have increased, I believe, after getting a break, retest, and hold above this key structure right here. Because overall, this is the main channel right here, in my opinion. This is the main area that you want to be in. Yes, that zone in the middle is important, but I think these are the most important zones. And I do think now that we've held this, it's starting to increase our odds, especially if we start cracking these previous wicks and continuing that momentum. What we're looking for on the weekly is a close at 116.2 or higher, ideally. Of course, anything above that would be even better. And the ultimate bullish case, we only have 2 days left, but that would be closing inside of the structure or above the structure for a retest the following week and a continuation. Of course, that's probably not the most likely scenario since we have 2 days left, and that would mean you'd have to see a 3% move, which isn't very large for Bitcoin, but just the way the momentum has been lately, we might not see that in the next 2 or 3 days, but who knows? We all know that Bitcoin can run up 10% in a day, so it's possible. We've been holding our 20-week SMA pretty solid. Daily's been holding up pretty well with the 50 acting as a nice level for a floor. And when we look at global liquidity, this thing is ramping up higher and creating fresh highs continuously. You can see that it's really just taking off. So as we said before, we're looking for that extended move on Bitcoin. The time frame is starting to just push back, which is good, because the longer the time frame, the more room Bitcoin has to run for the cycle. And of course, on the monthly, what we want to see is a close at 116 or higher, somewhere in these wicks. That's what we want to see. Ideally, closing above this upward sloping trend line for a move to this dotted line right here for potentially our cycle top, maybe by the end of 2025 or early 2026. We'll see. And of course, we're keeping our eye on tether dominance. We have 11 days left for the monthly. If we can close inside of these wicks, that starts to increase our odds, especially if we close underneath the structure or some kind of retest and a continuation down. We're going to be looking for a move down to this potential downward sloping trend line that we've had established from early on. We're looking for a move down there for potentially a retest or potentially falling all the way through to the blue line, which would probably mark our local top for Bitcoin. This move is looking pretty solid though. Let me take a look at the fib. Bounce right off the 0.5, and it looks like we're getting a continuation. If we can break this wick right here at 419, that would be a nice continuation of this move, and we could potentially see a nice bear flag play out. We'll see if it ends up happening, of course, but ideally you would want to see something like that, which would line up with what I was talking about, which is pretty much having this second leg play out and coming to this downward sloping trend line, maybe seeing a little retest, push back up here, cool off period for Bitcoin, and then a continuation down, hopefully touching this blue line for our cycle top. And the SMAs are still practically in the same spot, 50 days holding up pretty well, acting as resistance. And on the 4 hour, we have our 20 and the 50 pushing down on price. So maybe we come into contact with it, or the SMAs just start to, come closer and closer and continue this momentum to the downside. That's pretty much all I have for you guys. Make sure you drop a like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.